Alicia.
And together we are The Grace. So we wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about child disciplining your children. And we have seen a couple different ways that has been implemented. And some we agree with, and some we don't. Some we like, and some we don't. But we particularly get our wisdom and understanding on how to discipline our child and what manner to discipline our child from the scriptures, from the Bible, essentially. And there's a key book that everyone goes to, and I think it's a good book. It's the book of Proverbs, and it lists how to instruct your child, how to raise your child, how to discipline your child, and it's very, very helpful. It's helped us a lot. And we have a 1-year-old, and how old's our other son? You think I know this.
We have a 2-year-old.
See? There you go. A 2-year-old.
And a 4-month-old.
And a 4-month-old. I knew that.
Uh-huh.
But they're both just about, the 1-year-old's almost 2. He's getting there. But you could imagine disciplining them, more so, of course, the 1-year-old going to. It takes diligence, and it takes it builds character. Put it that way. It builds character. But there's certain ways and techniques that should be taken into consideration. But I wanted to read to you guys some of the proverbs that my wife has put together, and I think explains very well the methods in which we like to take on. And it's coming from Proverbs, starting in chapter 13, all the way down to chapter 29. The first one says, "He who spares his rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him promptly. A fool despises his father's instruction, but he who receives correction is prudent. Chasten your son while there is still hope, and do not set your heart on his destruction." And here's a famous one everybody knows. "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. The rod of correction will drive it far from him. Do not withhold correction from a child, for if you beat him with a rod, he will not die. You shall beat him with a rod and deliver his soul from hell. Correct your son, and he will give you rest. Yes, he will give delight to your soul. And last but not least, the rod and rebuke give wisdom, but a child left to himself brings shame to his mother." And we want to put a disclaimer on one of these. I know we're living in 2015 and words mean a lot. But one of them that says, "For if you beat him with a rod, he will not die." Just to make it very clear, we do not brutally beat our children. We don't elbow our kids, right?
Yeah, they don't have bruises left over.
We don't punch them in the face. We don't hit them in such a way that they're bleeding or they are welt. I think that's not...
It's child abuse.
Yeah, overall, right? But the method that we do consider and take is from essentially the Proverbs. So one thing to be considerate of when disciplining your child, I think number one that you should consider is not to discipline your child in anger, not to discipline your child in wrath. When a child does something, if you feel like you're going to lash out at that child in complete disgust and anger, and that's going to translate into the way you spank your child, that may come across as you hitting your child with enough force to leave that welt, or to leave some type of bruise on that child. I think it's very wise to, before spanking the child, sitting that child down and letting the child, the boy or the girl, know why you're spanking them, to let them know that you love them and that you're not doing this out of anger, but to discipline him or her and to correct them into the proper way that you're trying to show your child.
Yeah, and we get that from the scriptures, because it talks about instructing them, correcting them, rebuking them, and that's the best time to do it. If they did it, let me correct you, let me instruct you, and now let me show you the consequence of your actions.
So that's super helpful. And also this method comes from another passage in scripture that speaks of God chastening those whom he loves. God chastens his children. So ultimately, right, this concept comes from God, and we implement it into the family structure. Another thing to consider is when disciplining the child, to be consistent with your discipline. I believe it was a sermon I once heard by the gentleman's name is Albert Martin, I believe it was. I could be wrong on that, but I think it was Albert Martin. And he gave a little story on how a father would discipline his child and tell him how he didn't want his toys all over the place when he came home, and would have to correct his son on that on a continual basis. Well, one day he gets a promotion, and it's a big promotion, and he's excited, and he comes home, he runs in past all the toys that the son left, right, on the floor that he tells him to keep it clean and organized, jets into the wherever the wife was, he gives the wife a big kiss and tells her the story, tells the kids, and they all rejoice. And then the son is like, oh, I see, when daddy's happy, or if his mind's off of things, he doesn't discipline me about this. And we don't want to set that tone in our kids' mind. We want to be consistent. So if no means no today, then no should mean no tomorrow as well. Or if a good job, son, means a good job today, the same thing applies. A good job should mean a good job tomorrow.
And it needs to be consistent too, even between the both of you.
Mm-hmm.
So if Rion says, hey, Aiden, I don't want you standing on the couch, well, mommy needs to make sure during the day she's not letting Aiden stand on the couch.
Yes.
So that way it's not like, well, mommy lets me do it, or daddy lets me do it, either way.
Yeah, I agree. And lastly, I think it's important that along the lines of what Felicia is saying is to be on one accord with your disciplining, be on the same page. Disciplining for the same reasons, making sure we understand what we want to discipline for is helpful. That way the child isn't getting two spectrums of who to obey and how to obey in this area, but how to get away with this in this area. And then to conclude all of that, make sure that your child isn't coming to you for something he or she wants, and if mommy says no, then that child comes to me and asks me, and me not knowing that mommy said no, possibly I say, yeah, go ahead, son. But that's something to keep in mind. And also, you probably won't hear this aspect of discipline, but I think it is such a loving aspect. But if you're watching this, you're breathing and you're alive, right? God should destroy us for every sin that we've ever committed against him. He's our creator, and he made us to obey him and love him. I remember a story, not a story, we actually witnessed this, and the brother knows who he is. We call him Brother Goins, Brother Mike Goins. His child did something that she was not supposed to do. He called her to himself, and the young girl, he asked the young girl, what should daddy do right now? And she said, get a spanking. I should be disciplined. And he looked her in her eyes, and he said that, but I'm not going to discipline you right now. And he says his daughter's name, and he says, this is mercy. This is mercy because God is merciful to us. I want to show you a characteristic of him and how he is with his children, and he's merciful. So in that particular moment, he displayed mercy to her and showing her that he's not going to give her what she deserves, but nonetheless it was wrong. Now, we're not saying do that every single time, literally every single time, but I think there is a proper time in which a child should understand mercy.
And that setting too was a group of people.
Yes, and that was in front of a group of people. Yeah. So some things to put into your arsenal and use. I think it'll be very, very beneficial to you guys. Put it to practice, and you will see a good increase in the way you discipline your child. Take care, guys. Peace.